but I get the impression this song rubbed him up the wrong way just a little bit. It just because
anything to do with the chorus line,
oh,
potentially.
you mean
and the album title, potentially.
Yeah.
Hello, Shemai, Croeso, and welcome to the Fathers of Metal podcast with myself, Daddy Hugh,
and myself, Papa Ben. Hi, Hugh. It's been a while. How are things?
It has been a while, thanks. I'm quite looking forward to tonight's session. It's nice to get back on track with our favorite topic, which is metal and fatherhood, but it is metal tonight. So yeah, it's been good, thanks. Just getting used to the rhythm of having two daughters specifically. Yes. So we've had to deal with a lot of vomit today, but I won't talk much more about it. Again, welcome to METALIDADS. So just on that topic, we are METALIDADS. We are a group of heavy metal loving fathers, and we act as a community of support for each other and a support network as well as listen to metal music and talking about our favorite albums and favorite artists. So if you'd like to hear more about us, subscribe to our YouTube channel by clicking subscribe if you haven't already, or if you'd like to join our small army, then it's on www.facebook.com/groups/METALIDADS. So guys, let's crack on. So why are we here tonight? So we are back for another episode of Rockerspective, where we pick a year in metal and discuss our favorite albums from that year. Our format is a little different tonight. We will begin our pick for the big 5 albums of that year, of the more sort of high profile bands, which me and Ben are sort of joint chosen, and then we're going to give then our personal top 5 from this year. So maybe a couple of the big 5 might be on our top 5s, or it might not be. So so Papa Ben, tell me, where on the metal timeline are we going, or when specifically? Which year are we looking at?
Okay, so we're hopping in the heavy metal time machine, which I can imagine is a giant horn. I don't know how that works, but it's a giant one of these.
Is it not a telephone box like in Bill and Ted?
Could be. Yes. Anyway, and so we're going all the way back to pretty much, I think potentially both for me and you was round about the time that we both started listening to heavy metal, and that
pretty much
year 2001.
2001, so 20 years ago this year.
That's crazy. I was 9 going on 10.
How was I was 12. That's it. So that makes mathematical sense, because in May you will be exactly 3 years older than I am. Three and a bit. So younger. Whoops. But yeah, absolutely, man. So 2001. So man, let's get cracking. Really excited to cover this year. So as I said, we've got a big 5 albums, a list of albums that we've chosen. So just to hit you with them, we've gone for, please Ben, give me a drum roll. So we've got Drowning Pool, Sinner, we've got System of a Down, Toxicity, Slipknot, Iowa, Rammstein, Mutter, and Slayer's God Hates Us All. How do you like them apples?
It's a pretty strong lineup.
Yes, I think so.
Just to reiterate to the listeners, viewers, this is the 5. This isn't necessarily our favorite or what we class as the best. These are the albums that we would probably consider they were the 5 biggest releases of that year. So, when we do our personal top 5, maybe none of them make it. You never know. But they're the big albums. We thought, let's talk about those big ones first, and then we can kind of go a little bit more into our own personal favorites.
Absolutely spot on. So, apologies if your favorite band or album didn't make the cut. It doesn't mean that we didn't like their album. It was just a really difficult year to work with, and so many amazing albums came out this year. So Ben and I have been umming and ahhing all day, or for weeks actually, as in which albums are going to be in our top 5. And again, they're still changing constantly, and they might change in the next hour. Who knows?
And that's the thing as well, is we can't physically listen to every album that came out this year. No. So if we do miss any, and you think, they should have listened to that, just throw it in the comments, and we'll, we've always had the thought that later on down the line we'll do a revisit of these years, because there are just so many albums, and it's impossible to get them all. So if we have enough suggestions, then I think maybe we'll do a Rockerspective viewers favorite, where we will go back and listen to the suggested albums that the people have suggested from that year, and then we can do a Rockerspective based off those particular albums.
That's an absolutely spot on idea, because remember, guys, we're not in our teens, and it's not like we've got loads of bags of time to play with. We're daddies. We haven't got much time to ourselves. So it's been really difficult to have loads of time balanced with paternal responsibilities to listen to these albums. So I've actually got quite a few albums I've half listened to. I've maybe listened to the first half of an album just to get a rough feel or the sound of what the band is doing at the particular time. So I've got quite a few I need to finish off. So
as you stated though as well, even if you listen to an album and like that first half is trash, for instance, like even if the second half of the album is really good, it's not gonna, it doesn't change the fact that an album, to be a good album, it has to be consistent. So it's still, regardless whether or not you can have a couple of the best songs you've ever heard, if the album is trash, then the album is trash. Do you know what I mean? One or two songs can't save it. So
no, absolutely. Like I told you yesterday, I'm not going to name the album, but I was listening to an album yesterday, and I think there were 12 songs, and I got to song 10. I thought, I don't really need to listen to it anymore. No. I don't really like it. And even if the two next songs are the greatest songs in the world, this is just a tribute. Basically, I wish. It's not going to save the album. Again, if the first 10 songs are shit, then the other two songs aren't going to make jack shit, really.
Exactly.
Or Jack shit, or Jack Black in this case. So, Ben, let's get cracking. So, in the same order, really. Some of us, between you and me, we've got a bit more, I say expertise or listening experience over some bands than the others. So, the ones that, for example, the first band, Drowning Pool Sinner, I could definitely say that that's an album you definitely listened to a lot more in your youth than I did, because I've only actually listened to it for the first time about a month ago, and I have listened to it.
Crazy to think.
I know. Well, yeah. Well, the thing is, when I grew up, you remember you grew up in Cardiff. I grew up in Cardigan, and we only had Woolworths to get albums, and this is before digital ease. I didn't really have a great deal of access to many the lesser. I'd say lesser known bands. We're calling this a higher profile band, but if it wasn't on the Woolworths shelf, I couldn't get it. And again, internet sales wasn't really a normal thing you did then either. So Ben, tell me, maybe you want to start. So Drowning Pool Sinner, what have you got to say about this album?
Okay, so first things first, this was the debut album for Drowning Pool. And where do we start with this? So it was also just to kind of touch on, I can't remember the singer's name. I can't believe I've forgotten the singer's name off the top of my head, but it'll come to me eventually. But so this was the debut of Drowning Pool's debut, and sadly, it was also the last album that their vocalist made.
Dave Williams.
Dave Williams, thank you. I should have known that, because it's the same name as one of my ex-band members' brothers. So I always kind of put that together. So sadly, this was the last album he also ever made, because he died of a heart attack. I think it was the year after.
Yeah, 2002. He was only in his late 20s, early 30s. I think so
at
the time.
Really young.
Very young.
Yeah. And I fair play to Drowning Pool. They have been able to kind of move on and kind of continue, but there's always that what if he was still around to do something with. But so kind of take that out of things. I'd also like to say that the Drowning Pool, I think while we're talking about it, I might try and edit in the album covers just so kind of everyone knows what we're talking about. But I'd also say this has an extremely iconic album cover. It's the hand on the woman's head, but the iconic bit about it is those flame tattoos that he has around the wrist, and I think it says Sinner on his knuckles, kind of across here. It's very, very iconic. It's a great album cover. This this album as well kind of holds what is potentially one of the biggest metal singles of all time, and that's the legendary Bodies, Let the Bodies Hit the Floor.
And I like to think that song is the greatest metal karaoke song of all time.
Oh, it is. It's close between that and Rolling.
Well, and I think Chop Suey and Killing in the Name of, I'd say those are probably
the top
talking
five.
About the top 4, top 5. Yeah. So, but You know,
It's
there's
such an iconic song. I mean, it literally will, that song, I mean, it has gone down in history, but it will continue to go on in history as one of the most iconic songs in heavy metal of all time, and nothing can take that away. That's the thing. But so this album, so this was 2001, was kind of right in the thick of new metal.
Yeah,
and
well, as
this
Ben
is
calls it, in the sweet spot.
in the sweet spot. This is right in the sweet spot of new metal. But talking a sweet spot, this album. So it's a relatively short album. It's 11 songs and only 37 minutes long. I don't. There's like one song, two songs that's like 4 minutes. They're all 2 and 3 minute songs, but they are like it's such a solid album. This is pure new metal. You know, it's kind of real chunky, real what's the word? Trunky, groovy. Thank you.
Very groove based.
Very groove, very chunky riffs. Every single song you can really like bop your head to, and in some way the album possibly hasn't had the credit that it potentially deserves because of how iconic Bodies has become. The whole album is brilliant. You know,
it is. No, I've listened to it 2 or 3 times. Either in the car or in headphones, and I'm surprised I've never really come across it closer, and it really isn't that one-hit wonder at all.
No, it's not. No way. The whole album is it's well constructed, and it's just, you know, it's so consistently good as well. And that's the thing. This is such a shame, obviously, that Dave passed away after this, because his vocals are so iconic. Both in those growls that he does, but even in his like singing voice and that, it's very
man.
Who I can kind of associate that with, but it is very unique in his singing voice.
I was listening to Dave's vocals the other day, and I thought he shares almost the same voice box with the lead singer for Mudvayne. I think they sound very, very. The grain is very, very similar, but I think
his growls are a little more guttural. I suppose you could say a little more vicious.
Probably so. Yeah. But I think I wouldn't say Dave set a precedent. You know, you Chester Bennington from Linkin Park to an extent did as well. But I think a lot of people were going for that Dave sound in the past couple of years. Afterwards, and again, it's the growl, that sounds, and the again, one thing I think makes new metal sometimes, and I think the Drowning Pool encompasses very, very well. You got like I wouldn't say a minor sounding riff, but like a powerful sounding riff, which almost has a minor feel to it. But then the singer singing a major melody,
like the contrast.
So I think that's quite a new metal thing, and even. They're not quite new metal at all, but even bands like Nickelback do it as well, especially the early days. So I'm trying to think, la na na na, that sort of melody. I'm trying to think of there's like 2 or 3 times he sings that sort of 3 or 4 note sequence, either in a chorus or somewhere, but it's sort of that itself in Gregar's composition is actually, I think, a staple to a lot of new metal. You've got minor in the background, but there's a bit of major lift in the vocals or by just the individual singer, and I think Dave did that very, very well. How he wrote the vocal melodies. Just one thing I've got down here on my notes. It's something I don't think I've heard many bands of that era do it as often, but I always remember Drowning Pool, specifically the guitarist and how he uses wah-wah pedal in the riffs, rather than just the solos and stuff. And that's what makes Bodies such an iconic song, is the wah. And you know, the riff is really simple. All the Drowning Pool riffs, they're nothing crazy, but it's just so tastefully done. And that wah really, because there's only one guitarist, and one bass player, it really does give an extra sort of, I don't know, texture. It definitely gives a bit of texture. So that's one thing I liked about the album, and it didn't make all the songs sound the same. It gave them all that signature sound, and I think the guitarist had a big role to play in that, and just his great use of the wah pedal. I think so. What do you think?
I was going to say, I mean, it's one of those things, I think, that as you say, it was so tastefully done, even to the point where it's only, funny enough, I've listened to this album since it come out. So that's 20 years I've listened to this album, and not once have I really taken notice of the wah. But that's not to discredit it. That's to say that I just accepted it as part of that sound without it being, what you would have thought if somebody said to you, right, you know what, let's write an album and let's just have like every song for 80% of the song is going to be, I'm going to use the wah. Most people would be like, you're nuts. That's going to sound really like in your, it's going to really obtuse.
Too much.
Yeah. But it's not, and that's what I mean. It was only when you brought it up I thought, oh yeah, shit, like this they use a hell of a lot of wah, but
yeah, they do.
It's so tastefully done that it wasn't crammed in, it wasn't forced in. That was just their sound. That was them, and I got to say, their songs are very fun to play. In my previous band, we covered Bodies, which was always a favorite, as you can imagine. As soon as everybody, or as soon as you hear that, let the bodies hit the floor, let the bodies, or you see it, and the best thing about that song is it expands generations, because we would go and play clubs full of 16-year-olds. As soon as you hear that, let the bodies hit like everybody, the tension, like everything just rises, and even these like 16-year-olds who weren't even alive when that song was out, they get pumped and they know, and then when it drops, pits everywhere, and it's so much fun. So they're very fun songs to play, and Bodies was the same one as well. But I mean, considering as well, this was a debut album, and obviously doing this Rockerspective, we've listened to some strong debut albums.
Yes, absolutely.
But in terms of, there's not many debuts that you can have a good debut album, that's fine, but this debut album, apart from the fact that it's probably one of the best debuts of any band, it was like there was a one-way ticket to stardom almost with this one. As soon as it dropped, it just went straight up. And it's a brilliant album. It's just unbelievably consistent, real chunky, full of groove. There's not really much more I can say about it apart from
absolutely,
people need to go and listen. If I was to choose some particular, if somebody, I mean, we do have a playlist that there'll be a playlist to
listen to. So like 2001, absolutely.
This will be a Spotify playlist. I think from the next Rockerspective onwards, it might be Amazon playlists. I don't know whether or not I might keep Spotify around just to create the playlist. So, but either way, for this one, there will be a Spotify playlist 2001, and I'll put a selection of songs from this album into it. Most notably, obviously, Bodies will be in there. Should I tell you what? Interesting. One of my favorite song on this album is actually the song that comes after Bodies. Is called "Tear Away."
Tear Away. Oh yeah, that's
that's
song. Brilliant.
Such a good song. But the whole album is amazing, and everyone should go and listen to it.
Cool, man. So that's album number 1 out of 5 we discussed. That's Drowning Pool, Sinner. Again, we're on Rockerspective 2001. So that's number 1 out of the way. Cracking start. And again, it is a cracking album, what I've listened to quite a lot. So next, in no particular order, we've got Toxicity by System of a Down. You could say this is probably another step above in regards to being high profile.
Yes.
Especially, I have to put it in there, but there's a song on this album that was last week, I think on the Loudwire website, was voted the greatest metal song of the 21st century.
That's a hell of a title to take.
That's hell of a title to take. And again, I've already mentioned this song in regards to being a metal karaoke song. That's of course the Chop Suey song, also, which has got an iconic video, hasn't it?
Just to put out, last year that song hit 1 billion views on YouTube, on the official the official video, because it's been reposted by so many people. But what 1 billion views it's reached, which it's big for anything, but it's 1 billion views on a heavy metal song, which that's massive. It
is
like, you hear about Justin Bieber, he gets 1 billion views on a song. Eminem gets one. You kind of go, okay, that's impressive, there's no denying that. But this is a heavy metal band and they've reached 1 billion. It's seriously impressive.
It is impressive. And now, so Toxicity, what can I say about this album? I've known it for a long time. There's nothing and nobody sounds like this band, System of a Down. I'd say they're one of the most original sounding metal bands of all time.
Yeah.
Especially the early stuff. You just know by the strung of the guitar, the sound of the drums, it's System of a Down. Placing them in a genre is always difficult because you can't really call them new metal.
No.
I think they'd be called neo metal, which is I'm not entirely sure what neo metal is. But if you do know, put it in the comments. Yeah. But I don't know if I'm going to be controversial saying this, but I think they're folk metal, because folk metal people associate with the Scandinavian power metal bands or death metal bands, but folk literally means music from a country. Yeah. Folk means people. That's what it means. Yeah. So folk music means Irish folk music is music from Ireland. Welsh folk music is it's technically folk metal from Armenia. So I suppose, but I know it's an unusual way to put it, but I think officially that's where it should be placed. But it's within the new metal sort of I think community or cloud.
It's kind of adopted by the new metal. Bubble.
Yeah, absolutely, because they were played on the same stations, whether it be Kerrang, Scuzz, MTV, MTV2, etc. What have I got written down here? What I like about especially the first two albums, and this album's no different. It's System are very punky in the simplicity of their riffs and ideas, but it's done with gusto, confidence, and aggression. It's not really polished, but that's what makes it fun. It's raw. It's still the second album is still raw, not as raw as the first one, but it's still got that punkiness to it. You sort of see what I'm getting at there?
Yeah, definitely.
What do you think? So
yeah, so this is kind of confession time. I wasn't the biggest fan of this album when I re-listened to it for this Rockerspective. I threw it on and I thought, this is going to be amazing and I really enjoy this. So again, 15 songs, 44 minutes is pretty standard length for an album. And there's nothing wrong. The songs on it are absolutely fine. The trouble I found was I looked back and I was like, how long's this album? Because I genuinely thought I'd been listening to it for over an hour by this point, and it was only halfway through the album. For some reason, I found this album really difficult to kind of keep track of where I was.
Okay.
And that's not to say that all the songs sound like each other, because they don't. But I can't really describe it apart from I really struggled to listen to this album in its entirety. I actually enjoyed it more when I'd listen to 3 or 4 songs, go away and come back and just continue and kind of do it that way. Like some albums I can sit there and just absorb.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
This album I couldn't do that for, but once I changed the way I was listening to it, aka doing 3, 4, 5 songs, going off to another album, coming back and doing it more, I was able to enjoy it more. And obviously there's so many songs on this album which are so iconic, apart from obviously Chop Suey is well, it is what it is, but like the first song on this album, Prison Song, I gotta say, it's one of the best opening tracks and we say this a lot.
So many, I know. But we said it for Anthrax, we said it for
But if honestly, if we were to rank, which I think there's a video in this later on online.
Yeah.
If we were to talk about, say, the 10 best opening tracks of like any metal albums,
what an episode that would be.
Oh yeah, I guarantee you this is in the top 10. And for me, this would possibly be top 5.
Oof, that's a heck of a statement.
It might be like 6th, I don't know. But either way,
over Angel of Death.
But seriously, like Prison Song, I absolutely love this album. I love this song as an opening.
It is cracking. Again, talking about karaoke, new metal. Again, this is not new metal, but that era has so many sing-along karaoke numbers. And every time I'm in the car and this comes on, and I haven't done it as much recently because when I drive my little girl to school, it's only a 3-minute drive, where before it used to be a 23-minute drive. So I can't quite get into an album or a song, but I used to sing this and I just lose myself in the car because lyrically it's just so fun to sing along to. And especially, there's sort of two lead singers in a way. You obviously got Serge, but as a Darren, the guitarist, he puts a lot of his input into the vocals, and his vocals are just batshit crazy, and you always find yourself trying to imitate his really weird, screechy, high pitched sound. So it's a really, I can understand. You know, it can seem quite long. I think I just looked, it's 44 minutes in length. I think so, but it's really fun. Again, that's what I meant, the punk element as well. It's the punkiness. It's very much having a laugh and doing it with confidence.
Yeah.
Even though they might be like the prison song, it's about something very serious, but it's done. It's done. In a fun way. But that's quite a statement, and definitely out of this conversation, what a great idea to revisit that idea. But I've not really got much more to say on Toxicity. Me personally, I'm a big fan of it, and it's actually my go-to going to the gym album, because there's so many good grooves on it for cardio or doing anything with arms. It's just, there's something about the groove. It's just really good. So if you need an album to work out to, Toxicity by System of a Down is your album.
The thing with the albums, it keeps the tempo up, it keeps the pressure up. So it is excellent for running. Thinking about it, I'd definitely give that a go next time I'm in the gym.
I do that. So Ben, let's move on. So we've done Drowning Pool, Sinner, System of a Down, Toxicity, and now we're moving on to a big favorite of yours. Again, another album has taken me a lot of years to get into, mainly because I was quite intimidated by this band very early on in my life. But it's Slipknot's second album, Iowa, from this year. So I know you've done quite a lot of research on this album as a late in the sort of around the story of how it was made. So do you want to maybe start with that? Because then when you listen to the album, knowing the story, it really does put things into perspective. So I don't know if you want to start with that.
Okay, so Iowa, first of all, it's considered Slipknot's heaviest album, which I'd say it's probably the heaviest. It's the if not heaviest, I'd say most aggressive album.
Yes, that's a good way to say it.
And on that note of aggression, so this album, they had just done, basically the story behind this album is they had just finished touring their first album. They had just spent, I think it was a year and a half, touring the first album to a massive success, as we know. And so the band came off tour, and immediately there was pressure. I believe it was from the record label. There was already talk of a second album being recorded. But the trouble is, a lot of the band were burnt out and they needed a break. But Joey and Paul, the drummer and bass player, who at the time were the kind of chief writers, I suppose, and the rhythm section, they were kind of the chief writers. They ended up getting together because they were up for recording straight away. So they got together and wrote the majority of this album while everyone else was having a break. And when the album was kind of basically ready to go and rehearse and record type thing, the rest of the rest of the band were essentially pulled in, I suppose. But I don't want to say it was against their will, but it was, let's just say some of them wanted more of a break than others. As a result of that, the kind of recording of this album there was a lot of friction in the band. There was a lot of animosity, I suppose, building as a result, as you know, with these kind of different opinions of, you know, how much time you should have as a break and stuff. There were a lot of arguments, and this is right in the middle of, like, pretty much every single member of this band either had a drinking problem or a drug addiction. Like every single one of them, they were all right in the middle of, like, in deep of their addictions. I think it was every single member was addicted to something, and this was like right. And the main reason why they were so deep in at this rate was to get them through that first tour. Hence why I think some of them wanted a break, potentially to try and detox a bit. And obviously then there was pressure from other members of the band to kind of come back in. So, you know, in some cases, you know, if you're stuck in that rut, you would end up using again to just keep you going, which is, I assume that was the problem here. Anyway, so they did. So they kind of got on with it. But this album, there's a reason why it's considered their heaviest album. I would actually say it's not their heaviest, but their most aggressive album.
No, that's a good way to explain it.
Yeah, and and it's for that reason. But it's things like the recording process as well was just batshit crazy. So on the last song of the album, which is titled Iowa, it's a 15-minute song. Let me get this right now. I did write this down. So in order to in order for the producer to get the sound that he wanted out of this from Corey, from the vocals, he made Corey, and he'd done this throughout the whole album, but for this song in particular, he needed like a real like sound of desperation out of him. So he made him run laps around the recording studio, around the outside of the recording studio, over and over again, until basically he was being sick everywhere. Like you know, when you run so much, you just can't.
Yeah, I've done it, man.
Yeah, and he was panting and completely out of breath. And basically, as soon as he was like that, they threw him straight in the booth. And so, but at the same time, it wasn't enough. So after being exhausted, he was throwing up everywhere. He stripped naked, started cutting himself, and started recording. And that was the recording they used for the song. So when you're listening to the vocals of that song, like you were listening to someone in physical pain, mental pain. Like you were listening to someone literally putting their body through self-inflicted hell to get the sound. It's all to do with the artistry. Personally, I would argue that's artistry gone too far.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like
it's
what people do.
Crazy.
I wouldn't say is what people do for art, but that was very much forced into it. But again, the sad thing is this genius, genuine angst sound came out of it and inspired and was an answer and like a haven for so many teenagers like yourself. Well, I wouldn't say myself, because I found Slipknot early on in my teens quite intimidating. I think the slightly more radio-friendly songs I didn't mind, like Left Behind, which I think is a cracking song, as are most songs on the album. But I've only got into them recently, but listen to it and hearing that as context. Wow, how much, like negative energy and suffering went just to create what we enjoy as a second Slipknot album.
And that's the thing with this album. Slipknot have always been a band, as we've touched on in previous videos. Both myself and Hugh are bass players by trade. Hugh does a multitude of other things, but would you say you're a bass player first, or would you say
I'm split between singer and bass player?
And probably then guitar is kind of a secondary.
Definitely singer, bass, then guitar, definitely.
So, and with me, I'm just a bass player. And Slipknot, if you know anything about Slipknot, most of the time you would say that they're not the kind of band you would listen to if you want to listen to like, I don't want to say good bass playing. That's not fair on Paul at all. But if you want to
prominent bass,
prominent bass, you would listen to about 1,000 albums before you listen to a Slipknot album, because it's the pronunciation of bass has never really been there. Partly, I think, because they down tune to it's not drop B, it's a whole step. Oh, sorry, no, it's A. No, you're right. It's a whole. It's how many steps down is that? 3 steps down, something like that. So you go from your standard tuning, so E, D, C, B, technically what's that? 5 steps down, something stupid like that. So the whole thing comes down. So it's super, super low. The trouble with that is, if you listen to this to Slipknot through anything other than decent headphones or speakers, the bass is kind of not there. It's just simply too low. This was actually the first time I listened to this album through like a good set of headphones, and I was blown away by the bass straight away. I was like, oh my god, there's bass here. And it was good bass as well. It was like there was a lot of texture to it, and it was actually quite prominent. So I would definitely say this album, any Slipknot album, but this album in particular, if you're going to listen to it, like, I want to say decent headphones. We're not talking, you don't have to spend hundreds. Just don't listen to them in like the cheap, like the headphones that come with your phone, the really cheap plasticky things. They don't produce enough bass. Like, go and spend like, I don't know, 20, 30, 40 pound on a half decent set of headphones, something that is going to produce bass, and listen through those, and you will straight away you'll be like, oh, there it is. There's bass in this, and it's genuinely good. It's really good. And it's really pronounced, actually. And actually, I'd say this whole album is very predominantly bass led.
Well, first thing I'm doing in next payday is getting headphones, and the first album I'm going to listen to is "And Justice for All" by Metallica to see if I can find some bass. In joke. There we go. Let's move on. and Jason Newsted as well. I'm sure that's the first thing he'll do. But yeah, like I said, it's bass driven. It's very rhythmically led. As I think you mentioned it before, it was led from the back rather than led from the front. So it's a very and those are the type of albums I really like. I'm a big fan of bass heavy bands because I think they have very signature sounds which no one else has. Again, you know, Iron Maiden, Manowar, Primus,
Metallica.
Metallica to an extent as well. Yeah.
Metallica albums.
Absolutely.
3 Metallica albums, right?
Yeah.
No, exactly. I think the thing with having your bass and your bass player and your drummer, your rhythm section essentially being the main songwriters, is you tend to find the songs overall tend to be more rounded. The perspective is seen, because I'm generalizing here clearly, but like if you're a lead guitarist, you're kind of you the whole point of you being there is to be out in the front, being an individual, and it's the same as a vocalist. You're kind of being that individual. Rhythm guitarists aren't so bad, but again, they're very much part of that front kind of front line, where as a bass player, you have to listen to the drummer, you have to listen to the vocalist, you have to listen to the rhythm and the lead guitar. You've got to listen to everything to figure out where you sit in that mix, and when to let yourself shine, when to hold back, when to this, when not to play, when to play. And it's all to do with observing the rest of the band. In some way, I'd potentially say a bass player has to observe what everyone else is doing more than a drummer, because the drummer they focus on what they need to do, which is keeping the beat. Everyone has to follow them then, where the bass player has to sit in that gap where they've got to link everything together. So I think as a perspective, you have to have that more rounded perspective. I'm generalizing here clearly, but as a blanket term, I think I've covered that.
Yeah, man, absolutely. No, that's
and Paul's a good example of that. Paul's a very good example of that. If you ever see him live, Paul's very much like he's in the back somewhere. He doesn't, he's not doing anything super crazy or flying around, and he's sitting in the back, locking down what he needs to lock down. And this album is exactly like that.
Cool, man. No, that's a good way to look at it. It's like, again, he's one of those overlooked people, like is it Cliff Williams of AC/DC? Sort of sits at the back, but is the absolute adhesive to absolutely everything.
John Deacon of Queen is another one.
Yeah, Ian Hill of Judas Priest. They're just very, very simple, but it's just, sitting quietly, but just literally locking everything in together. Absolutely. So and
that's again, what being a good bass player is all about.
Yeah, dude, maybe with Iowa, we could potentially revisit that as a single episode, and maybe the Game Changers, which will start soon. We will be talking more in detail about a particular album. But just to move on, because we've got quite a bit more to get through. So number 4 for 2001 for our sort of big 5, we've agreed on Rammstein's album Mutter. Now, most people are probably familiar with Rammstein. What I find amazing in a industry or style of music which is predominantly in one language, which is the most spoken second language in the world, it's unusual for a band that isn't singing in the English language to become so well known and so popular and so well followed and so successful. So I think I had to really add these guys on the list, because it wasn't just this album, but they've been good throughout their entire career. But I think this is their magnum opus is Mutter. So maybe I'll again, this isn't talking about the gym. This is my second choice for a brilliant album to work out with in the gym. There's brilliant grooves and brilliant beats on this album as well, so, and especially for running and stuff like that. So the first thing that comes to my mind when I listen to this album, or two things really. One, the sound engineering of this album is absolutely incredible. The sound of the instruments are amazing. Sometimes you get a bit dodgy acoustic guitar sounds. It sounds, but maybe it's supposed to be dodgy. I'm not sure. But and the heavier instruments, the distortion, it's crisp and fantastic. But the way I describe this album, if you measured albums on the strength of the first half of the album, I think this is the best album to come out of the past 31 years. Because the first half of this album is just jam-packed with their biggest hits. You've got Mein Herz brennt, you've got Links zur Drei Vier, you've got Sonne, you've got Ich will, Firefrei, Mutter. All the biggest hits are within the first half of this album. And it's just jam-packed, and they're all very, very different. None of them are the same at all, really. And you get to sort of halfway through this album, and there's a song called Zvita, which I think in German basically means transvestite, or means half man, half woman. I think half man, half woman is the translation. That is actually, I think, my favorite of all time Rammstein song. And I think because this is my favorite song, anything that comes after that song, I'm very disappointed with. So every time I listen to this album, I sort of get to Zvita and I almost like turn the album off because I'm done now. Because the strength of this album, if it was like Master of Puppets, it was 8 songs. It would be, if it was just that long, it would be probably one of the greatest albums of all time in metal music. But there's a lot of tracks after that, which they're not terrible. It's just I'm underwhelmed by the second half of the album because I like this one song, which is sort of wedged in the middle so much. Really.
It's funny you say that. I'm just pulling up the album here. There's actually only 3 songs left after Zvita.
Oh, it's only 3.
Only 3.
It's like you and Toxicity. It just feels like you're there for absolutely. But maybe I just need to be more patient, Papa Ben.
Well, I think I need to be the same with Toxicity. As I said, for me with Toxicity, it was more about I need to listen to it in chunks to appreciate it. For this song, so Zvita is song 8.
It's song 8, is it? So it's 11. Okay, cool.
And then you've got you've got 3 left after that. So I guess you could say if this album was measured on the first 2/3 of the album.
Probably so. Then not half. Then so I think if it stopped at that, it really would be genius. But again, Rein Raus, I think, is the name of the next song. I think, which is again, again, it's a great album, but for some reason I just got this weird relationship. I just sort of hear that and I'm done. But it is a brilliant album again. And do you
find it overwhelms its stay after that?
Maybe potentially. I think it just because I can't think of any albums. I can't think of a single album with just so many hits in such a short space of time, and them being all just so different. Again, it's just jam packed.
I think where Rammstein have as you said, it's very unusual for a band to not be English speaking and to be so successful. And I think they've been smart about it. I think it just comes down to the fact that instead of they've leaned into that. And I mean I can't remember his name, but the vocalist for Rammstein, he's got such an iconic voice, and it's such a haunting.
It is
a haunting voice. It's so unique, and it's so. I use this word textured a lot, but it is. He's got one of the most textured voices I think I've heard of anybody, and I think what he does is he understands clearly. They must understand that writing songs in German is going against the grain in terms of popularity and money. So what he's done is for the people that understand what's being said in these songs, it obviously appeals to them. But what they've also done is they've written the songs in the way where his vocals are becoming, as I've said, maybe about other songs in the past, his vocals are another instrument rather than.
No, I know that's one thing you're a big fan of, isn't it? As in, maybe not necessarily the lyrics, but how the melody and the tone fits into what the other instruments are doing. And
I think they're aware of that, so they've been able to incorporate his vocals into that. So you can appreciate his vocals without understanding a word he's saying.
No, absolutely.
You don't need to understand in the same way that the way I, like you say, I listen to music. you know, unless I listen to a song 50,000 times, I won't even pick up what's being said, because that's not how I listen. I listen to, as I say, the voice as an instrument, not the voice as not the meaning of the lyrics. And that's what they've leaned into. And I think that's why they're so popular.
A couple of things. So Till Lindemann, that's the name of the singer. I think he had a bit of a stint, or I think he had a couple of solo albums. I'm sure he's had a stint doing that as well. Two other things. One thing, again, makes them iconic, and specifically him as a singer, I think so, is, you know, in heavy metal music, it's almost a staple for singers to either be aggressive and growling or screaming, or to have what you call the like the operatic tenor voice, so to be really up in the gods, really, in regards to your range.
Your Rob Halfords.
Like your Rob Halfords and your Bruce Dickinsons, etc. But there's not many metal bands that are I'll say this famous, but have had this much success, and the dude's a bass baritone. Because he's down in the depths. And he's singing on top of it can be very aggressive music, a lot of the songs, but he's clean. He's completely clean. He's actually operatic in how he sings to a certain extent. But so that's again, that's a really interesting thing they have. And from what I understand, because I've got quite a lot of German friends, more about 10 years ago so than now, but in Germany, they're actually not that big of a deal, mainly because how they actually write songs. Again, the standard of the German they use, it's almost like nursery rhyme English. It's actually really, really, really basic. So people wouldn't speak in Germany like how they write their songs. It's almost like it's really, really simple.
Is that to make them catchy for
Probably, yes, potentially. So maybe it's a way of tapping in to it. So like Sonne, for example, it says eins, zwei, drei. It's just counting. How many songs would you have in metal? It will go one, two, three. You know, we think about it because it sounds German. Think, oh, he's saying something really dark and exotic. He's literally fucking counting in German. So it's really, really. I like I think of last year with my friend Papa Jim, who's also a METALIDAD, I acoustified the song Sonne by Rammstein, and I got the lyrics. I found the translation, and it's literally, "Here kommt die Sonne." It's just, "Here comes the sun. Here comes the sun. It is the brightest star of them all. Here comes the sun." That is literally the chorus. So it's really, really simple German. So
learning German with Rammstein.
That'd be a great video in itself. Learn German with Rammstein.
Should we pitch this to CBeebies and see if it'll take off?
You never know. Weirder things have happened. Maybe before we move on, Ben, is there anything else you'd like to say about this album? Do you have got any memories or anything you'd like to add?
I've really only listened to this album as a result of doing the research for this. I've obviously heard a lot of these songs, but it's very, very atmospheric. And yeah, I mean, I really enjoyed it. This was a great great album, and it makes sense what you're talking about with the kind of nursery rhyme levels of German, because I ended up finding, like, again, not really understanding what's being said, but all of a sudden weirdly this is the album I put on when I do my dishes. More than anything, I don't know why this. Yeah, but I end up kind of just naturally starting to kind of sing to it, even though I don't really listen to lyrics. But that's because I don't listen to lyrics, I can just enjoy it and naturally pick it up. So by some miracle, while I'm doing dishes, I'm naturally learning German.
Well, there you go, folks. You heard it here first. Anyway, that's a good thing to finish on. Again, so sound engineering, I think that's one of the big things about this band, especially this album, especially the guitar sound. You know, I think this is one of the best guitar sounds of almost any album I've ever heard, and I think it's encompassed in guitar-heavy songs like Ich Will and Sonne. Again, if you just listen to the headphones, it's just got this heaviness. Almost sounds like 200 people strumming the riff at the same time. It's just got that level of Power. Now, talking about power, band known for power and aggression, we got a last album of our big five for tonight's 2001 Rockerspective, and it's again a band that's been around for a lot longer than the rest of these bands combined, and that's Slayer, and it's the 2001 release, God Hates Us All. I don't know about you, Baba Ben, but I have known about this album for quite a long. I think I heard it a lot when it came out. I've had maybe 15 to 16 years of not listening to it at all, and I've started listening to it again recently. And again, another candidate for brilliant opening song to open an album is Disciple from this album. It's again, great guitar sound in this album.
Possibly, I would say Slayer's best guitar sound.
Do you know, I think I've mentioned that in the previous Rockerspective, might have been Rockerspective or some episode, but I think Raining Blood and this album, I think, have the best sounds for the guitar. It's just, again, I don't say it's not a clean sound, but again, it's crisp. There's a great crisp, heavy sound to it. And they're tuned down to, I think, C sharp in this album, as opposed to E flat. They're normally just half a step down like they are on Raining Blood. But yeah, I think it's C sharp here, which is sort of like Children of the Grave of Black Sabbath in 1971. So that key. But cracking guitar sound. Absolutely.
Yes. The thing, like you say, what an absolutely beautiful is the wrong word, but it's a really strong way of starting an album with Disciple. It's funny enough, there's a guy on YouTube that I've started watching. It's one of those that I've watched a few of his videos, but I don't know whether or not I'm going to subscribe yet. But it's a guy called Rob, and he's an American pastor. So he's a man of faith. He's and he reacts to basically heavy metal songs.
Yes, I've seen him in the rounds, but I haven't actually clicked yet. But yeah, something concept.
It's quite interesting actually. And they did a reaction to Disciple, which is, you can imagine, went down really. It went down really well.
Reject this fucking place.
and yeah, as you can imagine, I got the impression he's a really relaxed guy, Rob. He's a really relaxed guy. I really enjoy his style of reactions and that. But I get the impression this song rubbed him up the wrong way just a little bit. It just because
anything to do with the chorus line, potentially.
You mean,
and the album title, potentially.
This song rubbed him up the wrong way just a little bit, and it got him a little riled up, I think, because I think he potentially took the lyrical content a little too literally, when actually Tom Araya has actually said in interviews that this song isn't anything to do with God hating everybody. Because as we know, Tom is a hardcore, he's a hardcore Roman Catholic.
Absolutely.
And also, coming across in interviews, he's one of the nicest guys I think in metal.
It was, I think I uploaded a video of someone asking questions. The guy has got so much like positive, happy, big teddy bear energy. It's unbelievable. You can't be evil if you're as happy as Tom Araya. I swear he's a Mormon as well. He's just really, really just hello. How's it going?
He's so upbeat and
upbeat, absolutely.
He's awesome. But going back to God hates us all. I mean, I really enjoyed this. I really, really enjoyed this. It's just good fun. It's really good fun. It's just super aggressive. Good one for the gym if you want to. You want to go and lift weights in the gym. Running, you'd probably end up fucking sprinting everywhere trying to listen to this. But if you need to go in and you need to go and lift heavy, or you're going for like a personal best in some form of weight, or you're going for most reps you can do, having him screaming God hates us all and I reject this fucking race, and all this and that in your ears while you're pumping it, this will do it for you. It's got one of my favorite singles as well, probably of all time, which is Bloodline. I absolutely love that song. Probably one of my favorite Slayer songs, actually.
It is a crack. I think that's the first song I heard. For those of you who remember, who maybe were around 2001, who maybe in your teens, or maybe had access to Kerrang TV, Kerrang TV used to do like after 10 o'clock. They used to have like almost like an X-rated videos.
Yeah.
And the video for Bloodline was, again, I think them just playing their instruments in suits.
Yeah.
And then the next second they'll be covered in blood, and then they're back in their suits and then covered in blood.
Yeah.
It's a very iconic video. This song, it's a very again, it's almost like the argument, I would say an argument, like a positive argument we had about the song Seasons in the Abyss.
Yeah.
Again, it's a very unusually, that song is a very unusually radio-friendly song for Slayer. And Bloodline sort of is for this album as well, but it's still, like, Tom Araya's voice still keeps the energy and the roar, especially in the mid-section. I am the first. But there's enough aggression in the song to still give it some oomph, I suppose, rather than make it too radio friendly. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But no, this is it track 7, track 8?
Yeah, track 7. Yeah,
track 7. That's it. Yeah, no, it's a cracking, nice simple guitar intro. But again, just the
track
rhythmic
9,
break.
sorry, yeah.
No, track 9. So the rhythmic breaks are great. So it sort of catches you by surprise. You just got this, it sort of catches you by surprise. But no,
there's a good build up to it, and that's the thing throughout this album. You could argue, I guess you could argue with a lot of albums, but I mean, this album, again, 13 tracks and 42 minutes. So again, they're all 2-3 minute songs. A lot of these, there's a few songs in here that feel a little bit like filler to me.
Yeah, cannon fodder. Yeah.
If you were to compress the best songs, you could probably compress it into probably about 8. 8, I think, is kind of the sweet spot, as I like to call it, of things. And so I'd say there's a few. I mean, but they're all good fun. It's just just definitely there's definitely not as much. It doesn't feel like quite as much oomph in them as maybe some of the better songs. But the album is full of great songs. Warzone, Defiant,
yes, absolutely.
Exile.
Exile, yes.
Cast Down has got a great opening riff as well. It's real strong, real solid. Great. It's a great album. It
is a great album. I did get the vibe, again, the filler vibe when I listened to it last. I thought, again, for a Slayer album, you could say it's quite long, because the Rain in Blood, for example, that doesn't even make half an hour.
No, it's 29 minutes.
Something like that. So so 42 potentially is quite long for a Slayer album, I suppose. Again, being a thrash band that I've sort of almost been thrash for every single album minus one, which went more than the new metal one. Was it Diabolicus in music?
It's the one before this.
That's the one before this. So this sort of went down the new metal trend, but this is very much, it is still thrash, but not so, arguably not so the traditional thrash they were more known for. It was still he was still walking the line, I suppose, between what was out then and is still remaining true to their traditional sort of Slayer roots, I suppose. Would you think that's right to say?
Oh yeah, definitely. I think that's the one thing. I think people, regardless, you can love them or hate them, the one thing you can give Slayer credit for is they didn't falter off their direction. They adapted. Like, say, this album is a bit more friendlier to maybe the audience of this time, which would have been very new metal heavy. No, by no means this is new metal, but it's kind of friendlier to that kind of audience. But they've never really strayed too far off the line. Whereas, Metallica, for instance, started off real thrashy, and you could, their last album actually is a lot more thrashy. But there's a lot of albums from the 90s up until the mid 2000s, which are not really. They're not thrash.
Not at all.
Not at all.
Not at all.
So in terms of consistency, if Slayer release an album, you know what you're going to get with them.
Absolutely. I think that's, people don't give Slayer enough credit for plenty, but again, and sometimes you got to give bands, cut them some slack. Sometimes, it's wrong to think everyone can produce a perfect album and nothing but that from their careers. Sometimes people are going to have infighting or just want to go down a different route. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But Slayer on the whole have been completely, completely, I'll say flatline, bloodline. they've been completely absolutely consistent. So cracking album. God Hates Us All. So that's our top 5. So we've covered tonight our sort of, not top 5, our big five albums of that year. So Drowning Pool, Sinner, System of a Down, Toxicity, Slipknot, Iowa, Rammstein, Mutter, and we just covered Slayer, God Hates Us All. So Ben, if you don't mind, can we just pause there for a sec? I left 2 seconds. So now we come to our favorite part of the show, definitely my favorite part of the episode anyway, where we reveal our personal top 5 albums, which may or may not include the albums we've just been previously discussing. So Papa Ben, are you excited? I definitely am.
Very conflicted, but excited.
Because I haven't got a clue what your top 5 are, and you don't know what my top 5 are. Normally in the past, I think we've sort of hinted, but we've kept this as a nice little, almost like it's almost like a gender reveal party. We're having an album reveal party. let's get a bit of tension up. So how about we do it from 5th favorites to first favorites? We go 5 to 1. Do you want to go first? What have you got? Anything in 5th place? Do you want to go first?
Okay, so there's been a lot of back and forth, but I think I'm going to put number 5. I'm going to throw in Terra Incognita by Gojira. Ooh. This was Gojira's debut album, and it's bloody brilliant. It's Gojira. It's a long album. It's an hour and 17 minutes.
Is it that? Do you know? I've started listening to it, and I only got to about 3 or 4 songs. Not because I didn't like it; it was because paternal responsibilities were calling, and I either had to change someone's bum or make food or something. I haven't had the chance to go back to it, but I was not expecting the level of intensity of what I heard in those first 3 tracks. They were a lot heavier than I imagined the first album was going to be, and the quality of the album recording was amazing.
Wow. There's a certain level of, there's 3 live tracks at the end, so if you knock those off, it's still over an hour long.
Okay.
It's there's a slight, comparing to the other albums they've done, there's a rawness to it, but that's a debut album. It's raw, but in a good way, and it's if you like Gojira, this is this is just more Gojira.
Awesome.
Can't go wrong with them. It's a great album. So that's number 5 for me.
Awesome, man.
What about you, Q?
Something absolutely weird choice for me, because this is type of metal I never listen to or wouldn't normally go out of my way to listen to at all. But this particular album had a major effect on my metal listening going forward. And my number 5, Ben, is Jane Doe by Converge.
Okay.
Are you surprised? So let me give you a little bit of context. A few weeks ago, the week my wife gave birth to my second daughter recently, my wife had a fall while she was pregnant, and we had to go and check if the baby was okay. And because it's COVID times, I wasn't allowed to go into the hospital.
Yeah.
So I was waiting for my wife in the hospital car park in Cardiff after she took that fall. And I was quite stressed and worried. And so I was waiting for a text message for an all clear. So all I did was sit in the car, and I was doing, some Rockerspective listening, and Converge by Jane Doe was the next one on my list. So I put it on, and it's a really, really heavy atmospheric album. And it's an album I'd never, ever traditionally. But I was listening to this album, and it was the first heavy album I'd ever listened to. And I was listening to almost like I was listening to classic FM. It was the first time this level of heaviness had soothed my spirit, because I needed de-stressing and I needed soothing. And somehow I found it in the form of Jane Doe by Converge.
Do you know what this is the equivalent of? It's the equivalent of going for a sports massage. You go to a sports massage, and if you've never been to one before, I played a lot of rugby. I'd done a lot of powerlifting after I played rugby. You go to a sports massage, if you're not expecting anything, you think, oh, this is going to be nice. No, they beat the shit out of you, and you come out, but you feel amazing after it. Yeah. And this, I can totally see. This is the sports massage
version
of metal.
That's a great analogy. Absolutely great analogy. Hopefully we'll revisit that again. But again, I couldn't name you one song.
Nope.
I don't know the names of the members. I know nothing about the band.
No.
But this album came to me at the right time, and what this album has done to me now, knowing that I can now listen to heavy music and it actually can soothe me.
Yeah.
Every heavy metal, really heavy album I've listened to since, I've listened to the same amount of fresh air and level of soothing. So Jane Doe is the single album that almost has like lifted a weight off my head and of my listening, and has actually opened my listening up to the heaviest styles of music. So thank you, Converge, really.
Lovely.
So it's just taken 2 decades for that to happen, but it was this album. So my number 5 is Jane Doe by the band Converge.
Lovely. Good stuff.
So what is your number 4, Ben?
Number 4. This is where things get real tight. So I am gonna go for. I'm torn, but I'm just gonna say it. Right, so I'm gonna go for First Strike's "Still Deadly" by Testament.
Testament, nice.
Interesting thing about this isn't actually technically a new album.
Not at all.
This is essentially them re-recording a selection of songs from their first 2 albums. So it's not a complete like re-recording of just what they've taken their best songs off their first 2 albums and re-recorded them for like a modern age. Things are with Testament, if you don't know, they've had so many lineup changes. There's only one consistent member, and that's their vocalist Chuck Billy. And everyone else has changed. So but from this point onwards, they've had a more consistent lineup. And so they've let's say they've just taken the best songs from their first 2 albums and kind of re-recorded it with that lineup in mind. I mean, it's brilliant. I love the bass work in this.
You can hear fantastic. We can hear it very clearly.
Yeah, so catchy.
I ran around Barry Island to this album quite recently, and it's an incredible album to run to. Again, we've done a lot of references to gym and running music tonight, but a lot of metal music is. But I didn't realize I'm actually not too familiar with the first 2 albums, so I didn't realize this was a re-recording of the first 2 albums until I heard one song I really knew well, which is a song called Burnt Offerings.
Yes.
Which is probably my favorite Testament song. And from what I read, this album actually wasn't very popular when it came out because a lot of people looked down upon it because it was a rehash rather than anything new. But again, I listened to it with the same level of appreciation as you did. I thought it was brilliant. And you got to, rehear things through better quality than you would have the first time. I think so.
Yeah. And that's the thing is, yes, you can go and remaster those old albums, but you're remastering old recording techniques. They just re-recorded their best songs, and in some way I'm behind that. If any other band wants to do that, I'm not against. If Metallica had said, you know what, we're going to re-record our best songs from our first 3 albums for the modern everything, wouldn't be against that. Absolutely not against that at all. We've got the remasters and they're great, but I'd love to hear how they would record them today. That really would be interesting with the techniques that are and methods that are available. Oh, definitely.
But dude, honestly, that's an album I really enjoy listening to. It didn't make my top 5, but thoroughly enjoyed the album. Again, brilliant running music. I really thoroughly enjoyed that. My number 4 is we've already discussed it. It's Toxicity.
Yeah.
Again,
I was expecting this to be a bit higher for you. I got to be
really interesting. So again, you said right at the beginning, consistency. I think even though you said you listen to it in chunks, I don't think there's a weak song on the album. There's some are stronger than others, but nothing is weak.
No.
And right towards the end and how it ends, I think this is such a consistent album. And it's brilliant, and it's so original. As I said, there's such an original band, and I've got nothing else to say. Number 4, Toxicity, System of a Down.
Lovely, good stuff. Right, number 3, getting closer now.
Getting close. Squeaky bum time.
So, yeah. So I've done, what have I done? So I've done Terra Incognita, and I've said First Strike. So we're gonna go with number 3. I'm gonna say the Antichrist by Destruction.
Okay. Ooh.
This is a tasty album. This is a real. This is like
belter.
This is like gourmet thrash. if you like thrash, you will like this album. This is in a world. I mean, this is 2001. This is when Linkin Park were massive. This is when like Drowning Pool came out and they were huge. I mean, Lost Prophets were massive by this point. New metal had taken over the overall metal scene by this point, and older bands were trying to cater for that audience. And then Destruction went, nah, fuck this.
Fuck that.
we're gonna make the thrashiest album ever.
Yeah.
and for the balls of doing that at this time alone, I love it. It's nuts.
It is nuts.
It's just thrash, just pure unadulterated.
Pure unadulterated thrash.
Yeah, I love it.
Dude, that's awesome. Such awesome album choice. So that's your number 3, The Antichrist by Destruction. Number 3 for me is an album I've known for quite a few years. I used to listen to it on an iPod when I was in my university days. Again, when I stayed at the gym many years ago, and it's very different compared to the rest of the albums on this list. It's a lot softer, more ballady, but it's Silence by Sonata Artica.
Okay.
Sonata Artica, a symphonic power metal band, but very different to a lot of symphonic power metal bands in regards to the lyrical themes. They don't really talk about, wizards, kings, dragons, like Manowar do, and I suppose, Blind Guardian and stuff like that. It's very much about love and romance, which is very unusual. But what I love about this album is, there's a song on this album called Black Sheep. This song got me into power metal and extreme metal.
Okay.
I heard my next door neighbor had like something like LimeWire or one of those very illegal streaming sites or softwares, and I went into his house once and he said, listen to this song, and I'd never heard anything like it. The best way to describe it is like sped up Celtic folk music on drugs. It was I'd never heard anything like it, and I was obsessed with the sound, and I was obsessed with Black Sheep for ages, and then I wanted to find the album where this came from, and it's the album Silence. So there's a lot of ballads on it. It's very ballad heavy, which is very unusual for metal bands, but the faster, heavier songs are brilliant. They're really fast. The drumming is killer. It's really double bass heavy. It's just full of hooks. One song will have loads and loads of hooks, and there's just hooks everywhere. And vocally, the Tony something is the lead singer, very high range. Stuff I've tried to sing in the past, I can't replicate. I definitely couldn't replicate this live. I've seen them live twice. Live, I wouldn't say they're quite underwhelming, but they don't. I don't think they choose their best songs live.
Yeah.
Or they play too many slow ballads, and they don't do enough of their faster stuff. I don't know if they can't do it anymore. But this album, if you, judging by your reaction, you probably didn't get a chance to listen to this album.
Oh, I didn't know.
So if you can. If you're not in a rush, to listen to the next Rockerspective, give it a listen once. There's a beautiful piano keyboard playing in it. If you like your sort of softer stuff, which I know you do as well. If you like, for example, Disturbed's version of Sound of Silence. If you like that song, you'll love this album.
Yeah, that's cool.
Very atmospheric, very piano heavy, atmospheric, great vocals. Insanely guitar and keyboard dueling solos. So this is a great example of Finnish power metal. It sounds very Finnish, if that makes sense. So my number 3 is Silence by Sonata Artica.
Amazing. Cool. Right, here we go. Big starting to get to I was going to say number 3. We're in the podium finishes, so now it's absolutely medalist now
for silver
medal for me. It was a toss-up, and this is gonna throw you big time, potentially. So it's a toss-up. And it was either going to be Violent Revolution by Creator.
Ooh, nice.
Or Sinner.
Ooh, good man. Nice. Okay. I like these choices.
And
so,
I chose Sinner, but Violent Revolution isn't my number one either.
Okay, cool.
Both of those, like I really enjoyed them both. But I think for me, the nostalgic factor,
yes,
I think that's over. And taking into account that, like Violent Revolution is an album that if I had a top 10, it would be in the top 10, definitely.
Yes.
And there's loads of great songs on it. It's again a very consistent album, which is part of that's what Creator are. Again, very consistent band, very good. But I wouldn't say, for me personally, there's no like absolute bangers on that album, as where Sinner has got some bangers. Do you know what I mean? It's a great consistent album, and then all of a sudden you've got these few songs that really stand out and really make it kind of I needed that to blow the cobwebs out, like so that's why that edged out for me. So yeah, Sinner's my number 2.
That's cool, man. I get the same thing about Creator. It is a really good album, but again, it's maybe if 2 or 3 songs were just a bit cranked up a bit more, it might be higher up my list as well.
Yeah.
But again, Creator, as regards to their entire career and the contribution towards thrash, they are massive. One of the most consistent thrash bands ever. Yeah, definitely. So yeah, cool, man. That's really interesting. My number 2 is actually a late entry. When I mean a late entry, it's something I only finished listening to this afternoon. I've had to listen to it in about 2 or 3 chunks, not because, well, it is quite long. There's a lot of songs in it, but it's because I've had X, Y, and Z to do.
Yeah.
It's not on Spotify. It's on YouTube. So I've had to listen to it on YouTube.
Yeah.
And it's an album, a band I don't really know much about. I've heard of them. I might have heard one song years ago, but my number 2 is the debut album by Enciferum.
Okay.
Or Enciferum, it depends how you say it. So I think stylistically, you might be able to call this Viking metal, potentially. I think it's called Viking metal. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments if anyone has listened to this section. But call it Viking metal, symphonic power metal, whatever you wish. Every song in this album is freaking amazing.
Yeah.
There are no weak numbers. The drumming is crazy. There's blast beats. There's double bass pedaling. There's sort of punkier stuff. There's folk. There's like a lot of folk metal melodies, almost like an element of Celtic folk or Scandinavian folk to it. Sort of piercing through really heavy guitars and heavy drums. There's so many rhythmic and melodic variations. The sound is amazing. It's got like a choir sound in the background. Again, the drum switches switches grooves constantly.
Yeah. Major
catchy choruses, and the choruses and the melody creates this amazing imagery in your head of Lord of the Rings. So you could call it Lord of the Rings metal. I don't know. It's but to me, I was absolutely blown away by listening to this album last night and today. And when I was listening to it, sometimes when you listen to an album on YouTube, it gives you like a playlist.
Yeah.
So I listened to this album, and then for some reason on the playlist, it had Enciferum doing a cover of Judas Priest's Breaking the Law. And the Breaking the Law is quite a generically sounding song. It's very simple. Yeah. It's probably the most famous Judas Priest song. It's nowhere near their best.
No.
And I thought, what can you do with this song?
Yeah.
It's quite, you can't do anything with it. Listen to Enciferum's cover of Breaking the Law. It is amazing. On the strength of them doing this cover, after hearing this album, I thought, you are so going in my top 5. I love you guys. Because of
not just top 5, they're number 2.
They're number 2, honestly. So my number 2 is Enciferum's debut album. Again, guitar work is amazing. The whole sound, the band sound it's so unique, and there's a lot of bands that, especially in Scandinavian folk metal, will sound a lot like what this album does sound like. So again, another album. Even if you listen to the first few songs just to get a vibe of what I'm talking about, listen to it. So Enciferum's debut album is my number 2. I'm in love with it. It's a really, really cracking album. Ooh, right. Now here we are. We're at the top. We've reached the top.
Gold medal position now, first place.
Gold medal position.
This is the favorite, the most favorite album from 2001.
Yes.
There was, you know what? I can't even lie. As soon as I listened to this album, like again, I'd listened to a few songs off this album, one being very famous in particular, but I hadn't listened to the album in full. And I listened to put it this way, I listened to this album probably about a month ago. So I still had a lot of listening to do. And as soon as I listened to this album, nothing come close to it nothing come close to it. So like that was the impact it had on me. And that is Tool's Lateralis.
Oof, of course. So yeah, so I thought that was coming. Yeah. Nice. Okay.
It is literally, I mean, I'm a big fan of Tool. Tool are one of those bands you either love or hate, I think. And even the people who hate it, I think it's just because they see them as a bit pretentious. They're not. They're just some of the best musicians as a collective ever. Like, all right, if you want to go technical, Dream Theater are probably the most technically gifted band ever. But I would argue that Tool are a better collective group of musicians and produce better, just me personally, I'd say better written, better thought out stuff. That's just a personal thing. Yes, Lateralis. It is literally like, for me, it's a work of art. Like I really do think it is a work of art. Like it's not even like the expression more than the sum of its parts actually does this a disservice, because that would indicate like these are like the songs are lesser. They're not. They are like the whole album from start to finish. It's atmospheric. It tells a story in its own way. Everything it's like in terms of, when I say perfect, nothing is perfect, but as perfect as you're going to get in terms of just the feel of it. Like this is one of these this is one of these albums I will sit there and listen to the whole thing, but I will only do it when I definitely know I've got the time to do it, because I don't want to not listen to this album in full. I either do it in full or I don't do it at all. I want to absorb the whole thing, because it's what makes sense. It's in some way, it's the same as listening to Ride the Lightning. You want to listen to that whole album. If you listen to it in full from start to finish, it makes so much sense. And you could listen to any of those songs at any time, and they're amazing songs. The same with this album. But you like to get the experience of it more. You want to invest yourself in the whole thing. That's how I see this album anyway. Obviously, it's got probably one of their biggest songs in Schism, which is one of the first ever songs I learned on bass, funnily enough. Just there's not really much more to say. Like I actually like if music could be a work of art, this would be a work of art. So
cool, man. That's an amazing description. For the record, I've listened to maybe the first 4 or 5 songs, and I was unfortunately interrupted by my wife saying that she needs to go to hospital because she fell. Again, I've got 2 my wife fell stories in this top 5. So I was listening to this album, and after I heard that news, I couldn't go back to listening to it because I wasn't in the right frame of mind to appreciate the busyness of what this album had to offer. Hence why Converge's Jane Doe just absolute mayhem absolutely did the trick. And I haven't gone back to listen to the Tool album yet, but it is on my list. But I can definitely see what you mean by, again, you use the word crafted quite often. It's
yes, I do.
I can tell it's like a big story, or like reading a book. You almost like you have to read all of it, type of thing, to get the entire context. But cool, man. Thanks for sharing. So Tool is your number 1.
Yes.
Excellent. Thanks for sharing. Now, my number 1, I'm going to keep it simple because it's something that has already come up, and what I love about this album is basically energy. The energy you get from song 1 doesn't let up at all. And there's no repetition.
Mhm.
Just because it's energetic doesn't mean it's fast and boring, but the energy stays through.
Yeah.
And I think this is by consistency more so than say Toxicity.
Yeah.
This is my favorite album of 2001. And again, it's an album I've only heard recently. It's one I'd never grew up with. So I've got no nostalgia for it whatsoever, but I've heard it 3 or 4 times, either out loud in the car or in headphones. And it's on your top 5. It's the Antichrist by Destruction. This is the thrashiest album I have ever heard.
Yeah. And this is coming from thrash heads, by the way.
I know, yeah, we're thrash heads.
Yeah.
There's such originality in the riffs. You can hear. I can now hear the difference between the Teutonic thrash, aka the German thrash bands, and the bands in the United States. I can hear, and I think a lot of that is to do with vocals.
Yeah.
They've got there's that type of almost black metal type of vocals, but. Again, huge fan of the vocals. The energy in the song, every song is energetic. It doesn't mean it's fast, as I said.
No.
They're all fast, but they don't get boring. Like you told me you listened to a band the other day and there's literally blast beats from start to finish. You thought, oh, those all right. It was boring. But the energy in this album, it just takes my breath away. And I absolutely love it. And Destruction have all of a sudden become my new favorite thrash band. And I'm going to spend a lot of time listening to their stuff from the start up until now. And I think they're amazing.
This album has an incredible opening as well.
Oh, yes.
Thrash to Death.
Yes, yeah. Oh, God, yes. Thrash Till Death. What a title. Again, my favorite song from this album, I think, because of the title, Bullets from Hell. It's just that the title is just so fun. Yeah. Bullets from Hell. But again, there's so many good songs on this album. Every song is amazing. Every song is... Again, just energy. I can't say any more than the energy that's in this album. It's just, I've never heard anything like it. There's not even a Slayer album.
No,
has the level of energy in their songs as this does.
Yeah.
Not even Rain in Blood.
No.
And that sounds a weird thing to say from such an iconic thrash album. But again, I don't know if it was a big fuck you to new metal. But if it was a fantastic fuck you.
Yeah.
It really was.
That's how you do it. I mean, as we said, this was right in the midst of new metal being the big thing to listen to record and listen to, and they just went, you know what? Actually, let's create the thrashiest album that will ever exist. Like, and that's pretty much what they've gone out and done. Just before we move on, because that's honestly, I can totally understand why that would be a number one. You know. And if it wasn't for nostalgia and Tool releasing an album this year, that probably would have been my number one as well, because it's just it's ridiculous. It's so much fun. Before we move on, I'm going to throw a curveball because we haven't discussed this. Name one honorable mention that didn't make your top 5, but you're like, oh, that's good. Only name one though. That's the hard bit. I've got one in mind. So do you want me to do mine while you're thinking?
Yeah, you do yours.
Okay.
Yeah, crack on.
Okay, so mine, there's a few that I definitely could say would be an honorable mention. You know, one that you could potentially say if there was a top 6, this would have been the 6th, or however you want to play it. It doesn't have to be that necessarily. But album that I really like, and again, it's really fun. It's M16 by Sodom.
Oh yes, that's
so fun. It's got some ridiculous songs on it.
Yes.
Again, it's got a great opening, but crucially, we have
a new favorite cover.
Yeah. So we've got Napalm. We got a song called Napalm in the Morning, which is obviously to do with what's the Apocalypse Now?
Yes, Napalm in the Morning.
Yeah. So we got that, but crucially, we have Surfing Bird. Possibly one of the greatest covers any metal band can do. What
choice of cover?
Yes. So for those who don't know what that is, but if you know Family Guy, you know this song.
Yes.
A bird. The bird is the word. A bird. Yes. So
we obviously weren't around when the song first came out. So Family Guy is the only thing we have.
Yeah. Yes. So imagine a German thrash metal band doing that song, and it's incredible. It's amazing, and crucially, as I've said before, it's the last song on the album, so it doesn't have to make sense with the rest of the album. So
that's cracking. Do you know, I've got a few honorable mentions. Albums like Emperor, the black metal band Emperor, released an album this year. It's got a big title.
It's their final album.
Pretty much, yeah. And they went out. There you go.
Prometheus.
It's Prometheus, the disciple of fire and demise. The black metal is one style of metal I'm trying to get into now, and because now my ears have opened to the heaviness of the most extreme metal, that was the first metal album I heard literally after listening to Converge during this time where I was a bit stressed, and I was listening to this again. I thought, fuck man, I love this.
Yeah,
I really liked it.
I've done about half this album, and it is really good. It is excellent. It's
literally one dude that wrote the entire album, so it's just amazing how much content one person could create. But so that's a close, but probably my number 6, if I could put number 6 in, or my honorable mention. Again, it's a band I've heard of here and again. There's a few songs I like, but I'm from the best sound. It's a power metal band, and I love their sound. It's almost like a bit of hair rock, thrash metal, and power metal all shoved into one band. And it's my honorable mention would be No World Order by Gamma Ray.
Okay. Yeah,
I think it was amazing. Again, it's on YouTube. It's not on Spotify.
No.
And I just love. I'm a massive fan of the lead singer's vocal. He's got this low growl sort of creepiness to his voice, almost like Ozzy has, like a haunting sound to his voice. But he's the guitarist as well, and I think one of the founding members of Halloween. So he was on the first album, Halloween, I think first couple of albums. Kai Hansen, I think the chap's name is. But so that'd be my honorable mention. Would be No World Order by Gamma Ray.
Amazing. It's a great choice. Great choice.
So we've come almost to the end. So we like to finish with our favorite song, favorite riff, favorite album cover, most influential album, and something you've introduced tonight, biggest disappointment.
Yes.
So how about I go first this time? Just again, I didn't realize you were going to ask this question just now of the one that got away album or the honorable mention, but my favorite song, So my favorite song is not from an album in my top 5, because that's how it works, I suppose. And what I've done, I've tried to include something that isn't in my top 5 at all to give honorable, to give mentions to other albums. But my favorite song is probably Gamma Ray's Heart of the Unicorn.
Oh, lovely.
And if you type it in, it's a homage to Painkiller by Judas Priest, massively. And that's not the reason I love it, but I just love it because their sound, again, it's power metal with a major thrash element to it.
Yeah.
And that's why I like Gamma Ray. So my favorite song is Heart of the Unicorn by Gamma Ray.
Lovely. So for me, I'll go along the similar lines here. So I'll pick something that outside of my top 5. Because what I'm essentially saying is that top 5 is my top 5 favorite albums, which means as a collective, they're the best. But as a song that stands out to me, and it gets me going every time, it gets the blood pumping, and it stands the test of time. Again, one to maybe blow off some steam to, and it's People Equal Shit by Slipknot.
Oh yes,
which is, I mean, it's the first proper song on that album. There's like a minute introduction, and then it goes into People Equal Shit. So this is essentially the opening song on that album, and it's just boom, just fast, aggressive, blow off some steam. But there's a lot of groove to it, and there's a real cool breakdown in it, and it's a fantastic song.
That is a cracking example of fuck you. Really sort of an angst type of song. That again, that's probably my favorite song on that entire album. That and Left Behind, I think so. But that's a cracking song. Now, as you notice, I've got this out because I like to show you my favorite riff, and I'm going to turn it up a bit louder than normal, even though everyone is sleeping. Can you hear this?
Yes.
With reasonable clarity?
Yeah.
Now, I've already mentioned this band and the guitar sound, and I think this song encompasses what I'm talking about. And I just think this song encompasses 2001 and the power and what was around in 2001, and it's a Rammstein riff.
Oh yeah.
So Sonata is my favorite riff of that year. I just think the sound of that guitar,
and the drum that goes with it.
Yes, it's just simple metal, but that could be, it's similar to, Symptom of the Universe by Black Sabbath or Ride the Lightning by Metallica. It's based on that same sort of pattern.
Yeah.
But again, that was my favorite riff. I just think it's so iconic, and it was used on so many like Kerrang adverts and stuff during that time.
Yeah, it was great. It was real great. Okay,
now, Ben, favorite album cover.
Oh, I've done my favorite.
Oh, right. Okay.
Thing, yeah. So
well, let me go mine. I just basically typed in 2001 metal albums in Google, and it shows on the front, and it just sort of reminded you of them. I can probably guess what yours is going to be because you mentioned it right at the beginning of the episode, and I almost mentioned this myself. I almost went for Sinner by Drowning Pool because of that, again, the hand on the head and the flames, etc. But there's something haunting about this album cover because of the album title that goes with the image. It's a very simple image, but something creepy about it. And again, it's Jane Doe by Converge.
Yeah,
I just think it's got that sort of just a real simple face of the woman and the name Jane Doe. So someone who's unknown, someone who's a mystery, someone who's lost, someone who's missing. There's just something really creepy about that album cover. So to me, my favorite album cover is Jane Doe by Converge.
Oh, lovely. Quickly to go back, I didn't do my favorite riff, but my favorite riff.
Oh, of course. Sorry.
That's okay. My favorite riff is the opening riff to Thrash Till Death.
Thank you.
It's just go and listen to it. It's and crucially, if you listen to it, listen to there's like a 49-second like intro thing first. Listen to that because it kind of bleeds into it and then it kicks in and it's fantastic. It's amazing. So
and it's a cracking way to start an album.
Oh yeah.
It is a cracking way to start an album.
Favorite album cover. So I think I'll stick with Drowning Pool Sinner because it is iconic for me. It's got the nostalgic factor. Again, it's the contrast, isn't it? Sinner sounds biblical, and the hand on the forehead, kind of with the woman, looks like she's kneeling, looking up with her eyes. Because it's almost like you could potentially say, it's the imagery of like, that biblical imagery of being forgiven or you're forgiven, my child, type of thing. That kind of thing. But obviously his hand has got Sinner written on it. It's got the flame tattoos. It's very iconic. It's very cool looking. So I'd say that's my favorite one, but a very, very cool one, which I think it's just, again, fun. Well, there's actually two that are very, very fun. Which one again is the Antichrist by Destruction. It's just, again, the craziness. Album art is exactly as you would expect from an insanely thrashy thing. But another album art piece of artwork that I really enjoyed, maybe not so much the album, but the actual piece of art that I really liked, was Bolt Throwers, Honor, Valor and Pride.
Oh, that's an album that's completely off my radar.
They are, I believe they are a British death metal band.
Okay.
And Bolt Thrower, they're not around anymore, but so I gave that along. The album was okay. It was okay. It wasn't death metal as I was expecting it, but it was okay. But the album artwork is just really good fun. Again, all these albums, I'll stick them. I'll stick them up on the screen as we talk about them. So So for me, Sinner is my favorite of 2001.
Cool, man. Excellent. So which is the most influential album, you think, without going too much into detail?
Yeah. So
maybe a quick why potentially.
Yeah. It's tricky because for me it's basically between Iowa and Toxicity.
Do you know, I was going to go between Iowa and Sinner myself.
So for that reason alone, we should probably pick Iowa.
Yeah, probably. Yes.
I mean, second albums are very difficult to do. We know that the second album is, the third album is the real tough one, but the second album can be tough to follow up, especially if you look at how successful Slipknot's debut album was. I mean, it's probably the biggest debut album in the 21st century, you know, in terms of the impact it's had, and yeah, you know, potentially you could call it that. So to follow that up would have been difficult, but they did it. And we're talking about an album that was recorded in 2001 and is still considered one of the heaviest albums, or one of the most aggressive albums even today.
Ever. Yeah.
So it's incredibly iconic. Again, with songs like "People Equal Shit," "Left Behind," "Skin Ticket," "My Plague."
Yes, of course, from that movie, Resident Evil movie.
Resident Evil, yeah. So it's fantastic. So yeah, I think that's a fair choice.
Yeah, I think that's a fair one. Obviously, it was in our big five for a reason.
Yeah.
But, you know, again, I said about Slipknot, you know, for what they did for live performances, they upped the ante with that. And again, musically as well, you know, it's so aggressive. Again, it's definitely the most aggressive album, and it's I don't know, it was terrifying.
Yeah.
But beautiful at the same time. It was terrifying, but people loved it. Yeah. People like things which is not good for them.
Yeah.
People wanted to hear it. Definitely. And it definitely did a lot for what came next.
Yes.
So, and last now we've come to the end. What was the biggest disappointment? This is something you asked me earlier, and I've written 3 down here, but I've underlined 1.
Okay, interesting.
So yeah, this is the only album I heard today, and I thought it was. I heard the first track in the car when I was taking my daughter to school. I thought, oh, this is incredibly radio friendly than what I was expecting.
Yeah.
And so radio friendly, so that I literally had it on when I was playing Play-Doh with my daughter in the kitchen, and thought this is gonna scare the shit out of her because there's not much to it. So it's "The World Needs a Hero" by Megadeth.
Yeah.
I was quite
underwhelmed
by it. Again, the riffage, as in compared to, you know, you can't compare everything to Rest in Peace, but riffage wise, they sounded exhausted.
Yeah.
Compositionally sound exhausted, with the exception, there's a song called, I think, "Return to the Hangar," which is like, I think, a sequel to Hangar 18.
Oh, okay, yeah.
There's even like vocal similarities in it. I thought that was awesome.
Yeah.
Really, really, really good. But there's a song on it as well. It's almost a rip-off of "Am I Evil" by Diamond Head.
Okay. Yeah.
But almost done to the point where I don't know if they're taking the piss or they're doing it as a tribute. Okay. I couldn't actually tell. So I was quite confused afterwards. I thought I was so zoned in on it. It sounds almost like a rip-off. I actually couldn't enjoy the song as it was.
Yeah.
So those two things. First, I thought the riffage was tiring. It was just a weird album. Yeah. So I didn't, Digimortal by Fear Factory, I was underwhelmed by that massively. The Sinister Urge by Rob Zombie, didn't get it. I didn't get that. It's highly recommended, but I didn't get it. But for me, the biggest disappointment was "The World Needs a Hero" by Megadeth. I couldn't wait for it to finish.
Yeah. Okay.
Sorry if there's any Megadeth fans out there and who like that album, but for me, it just didn't do it for me, unfortunately.
Yeah. That's understandable. I mean, at the end of the day, there's so much music that come out. It's impossible to like it all.
Yeah.
So I'm totally with you on "World Needs a Hero." I was expecting more, and potentially that's our fault because we expected that, but it's put it this way, there's 2 albums that I couldn't finish because I was bored. "World Needs a Hero" is one, and "Digimortal" is the other one.
There you go. I'm glad we got a similar idea about that.
Yeah, and for me, the reason, so Digimortal, I listened to this when I was younger, not when it first came out, but let's say 15 years ago. And I remember really enjoying it, and like the songs that are on it, like I remember "Digimortal" being a great song, Linchpin,
yeah.
It's I just, and when I realized, this is on 2001, I can't wait to listen to this. I was so disappointed. I was like, this, like, I thought, it must be my headphones. This sounds shit. Like, as in the recording, the mastering, the actual sound of this album. I was like, wow, this is bad. Like, maybe it's my speakers, maybe it's my headphones. So I've tried everything. I've tried different headphones. I've tried everything. it's shit. The best way I can describe it, especially because you introduced me to an album literally the other day, Static X's
Machine,
which that deserves an honorable mention. That's a fantastic album.
Do you know what it does? I've only listened to it once.
Yeah.
I know the song Black and White very well. It's an old favorite song of mine, and Cold. Yeah. But yeah, I heard it all yesterday, all the entire album in its entirety. And if you want to do industrial metal, you do it like Static X.
Yeah. And that lays the problem. So Fear Factory are kind of legends in the industrial, they are industrial, they're the top dog of industrial metal. A lot of people consider that to be, but you listen to this and I mean, compare it. If you go and listen to Static X's Machine first and then listen to this literally sounds like it's been recorded in a garage.
Yeah.
And it's been mastered by I don't want to say a trainee, but you see what I mean? Someone who hasn't got the experience. Shall I tell you what the mad thing about this is? This was a Roadrunner record.
Oh, serious? Oh, Jesus.
This is a Roadrunner record.
Huge label. Huge.
Yeah. Look, you could potentially say it's the biggest metal record label, especially at the time.
Yes, absolutely.
Shall I tell you what's interesting, though? This is their last Roadrunner record.
Ah, okay.
Makes you wonder if something is tied to that.
Because they did have a bit of a resurgence maybe 4 or 5 years later, potentially, with an album which I can't remember. They
got on the Archetype, which came out a few years after, which is a great album. Actually, I really enjoy that album. Some great songs on it. But this album was a Roadrunner album. So if you take that into consideration as well, the recording on this, it for me, it's shocking. Our last Rockerspective was 1984, and you expect stuff to sound a bit dated, especially if they haven't been remastered.
Yes.
But some of that unremastered stuff from 1984 sounded better than this. It really poor.
Digimortal sounds a bit laptopy. That's all I can describe it.
It does, yeah.
It almost like it was recorded on a laptop.
Yeah, this should I tell you what? This is not, I wouldn't say this is industrial. This is almost like they've kind of gone too industrial and gone almost digital. Do you know what I mean?
You could say they've gone a bit Digimortal. I suppose.
Yeah.
Hang on. Yeah.
It's too much.
Yeah. It's interesting. Both influential album and disappointing album. We sort of we've been in this the same ballpark, but I'm not put off Fear Factory. I'm sure there's better albums, and I will give them a listen another time. It's just Digimortal to do it for me.
As a quick one, I had a quick listen to Obsolete, which was their 1998 album.
Okay.
Sounds a million times better than Digimortal. And that was 3 years before this. So just to put things into perspective.
So Papa Ben, we've reached the end of our episode. We've had a fantastic episode on Rockerspective 2001. Basically, we've looked at our big five albums. We've both talked about our top five, our favorites. My favorite album of this year was The Antichrist by Destruction, and yours was Tool's Lateralus album from 2001. Our favorite song is the most disappointing albums. So yes, it's been great. And then 2001, you and I have a lot of nostalgia for, because it's a time we were really sinking our teeth into metal music for the first time, and it was definitely my first official year of metal music and getting into all this music. So yeah, dude, thanks so much for your input today. It's been really enjoyable. So
it's been a pleasure.
Thanks. Yeah, absolutely. Thanks to you as well. So guys, thanks to all our listeners. So diolch yn fawr iawn. Thank you very much for your company as ever. And remember, no matter the podcast topic, whether it's whammy bars or weaning, napalm death or nappies, it's always good to talk. So from myself, Daddy Hugh.
And myself, Papa Ben, have a good morning, good afternoon, good night. I'm going to turn into Truman at this rate.
The Truman Show.
We shall see you on the next episode of Rockerspective.
And stay classy, San Diego. That's from the Anchorman movie. Catch you guys soon. Thanks a lot for tuning in. Cool. Catch you soon. All the best.
Bye, guys.
Cheers.